Okay, what we're looking at here is the temple at Edfu. It's got a few strange anomalies with it. First of all, it's very modern looking design that goes along with it. What we're looking at today is an inscription set that's shown on the walls and written on the walls, like they said of the tale of Atlantis, in Sais, that temple that got taken away, and I believe during a earthquake and sedimentary part, it along with part of Alexandria and so on got sucked off into the Gulf, and we'll probably never find those texts that are there. But strangely, there's a text just like that, or extremely very similar, shown in this building set here, which the walls are literally covered with it, especially on its entire insides, which you can see here. But when we look at it, it's a little tough to discern, for you can go all the way up to the top, and the guy says that this text are right here or about the island and something. And strangely, during this trip, the guy that was there, that was kind of their guide, was going along and telling everybody, here's how they do their numbers, here's what this means, here's this cartouche of this guy, here's this, here's that. And when they get to this, he kind of mumbles it off and acts like it's nothing. And this is what they came to look for, by the way, and we're talking about the whole time. When they finally find it, he goes, yeah, that's it, and walks off and starts talking and tries to get everybody to follow him, like, nothing to see here, move along. Which they felt was quite strange. This is one of those trips that go there and they're actually looking for this type of thing. So when you look at this and you can see how high up this actually goes, it's pretty darn tall. It's like 40 foot. And he tells you that at the very top here, it starts off telling you that it's a story before stories, and that it involves this island, and how they had left from this island, magical island, and ended up coming into Egypt. But whenever they come into Egypt, they say on the wall here that it is Upper Egypt. So they come from wherever they came from into past the delta of Lower Egypt and came up into Upper Egypt, and that's where they started it off from. And this is a lineage that would lead to Narmer. Strange effect here on this is that whenever it gets to the point of Atlantis and 9,000 years ago and it does apparently, and I'm going to have to look up the Edfu text and see and find this. They're quite extensive. Find this again in it for you. When they get to the point of Atlantis, they don't actually say that. The strange oddity is they mention this place known as Capthor. For those that don't know, Capthor is actually the Crete and the land of the Minoans that got destroyed, and the number that's given on the wall up here, like the guy was telling them how to count numbers before, is not 9,000 years ago, but 900. And that correlates to that time, but it just takes 1 0 off, or actually they didn't use zeros there, they had thousands, and so you just take off the thousands and make it 100. Be like us taking off 1 0. So Capthor is land of men, it says here, in MIN. And some people have heard, of course, about the earliest coming together of the pre-dynastic and how they give credit to Narmer having put it together. But there was this ancient king that goes back, and most people say that this is a mythological idea of a king Min, which really goes together with this idea of the Minoans and where we get their name from, and that men from there. Strangely, also, I showed you recently in a video where the foundation of those Minoans were supposed to be from a European group and a Phoenician princess that rode the white sacred cow. That's the reason that we call it the Milky Way, hooked up with the Apis bull and Hathor and so on. Got a video coming out on Io, and it's kind of telling too. It's showing you an ancient mythology which might lead to Hathor also, and make a few connections of the cattle people. But how Min got out was that she's a Phoenician princess, along with Zeus, who, whenever she has her son, that ends up being the king that founded the Minoans in the ancient times. Now, that really wouldn't make much sense, and of course, where they lived is all destroyed of that ancient volcano that went and killed everybody off, apparently, and scattered the rest abroad, which it looks like recently they figured out that those Philistines that showed up were actually part of that sea peoples, and they hung around and stayed for at least the tenure that they had there, and that those were also European genetics that they find in them. It goes for a few hundred years and then blends in and starts to disappear. Strangely, they seem to have come from this place. There should be easily a connection made between that, but no one wants to unless they can show some type of direct connection. And the later iconography doesn't really show up to be, ta-da, it's the same thing, can't you see? So it doesn't work correctly. So I find it odd that here is something that's like what Herodotus has talked about, but yet this is actually, or what Plato talked about, I'm sorry. But this is something that's a little different. And it's got that sacred island, and everything went away in a day and a night concept in it, not written word for word. But if somebody was to take this idea and get it screwed up just a little bit, or want to mislead somebody slightly, they could easily have done that. We find in a lot of Herodotus' works that everybody seems to say is the father of history is really the father of hearsay, for what people said versus what the reality of it was in so many occasions. And I wonder if what we're finding here is not a conflagration where the guy took the idea of the Minoans that everybody knew about and what had happened just 900 years before, but they had pretty much, if you think of 900 years, they had pretty much forgotten all about it, and it was lost in the mist, and used it for the example. For a few researchers have found that the Pillars of Hercules were actually on the Aegean Islands, and there was 2 giant pyramids. Some have even tried to connect it to the pyramids of Joachim and Boaz of the Masons, and how they had fallen down during a great cataclysmic event that they attributed to the idea of Hercules or Samson pushing him down in that idea. So it's very possible that the Temple of Sais might have said something along this same line. It would be strange if they had something that started out in the same way and has the same ending, but the middle part of it was different and goes 900 to 9,000. Doesn't mention Capthor, but somehow phonetically spelled out this Atlantis idea. Another word conflagration on that is the Atlas Mountain, showing you that the early Berbers, which show a lot of blonde hair and blue eyes, green eyes, red hair, especially in a huge amount, a percentage that's only rivaled by Ireland and Scotland, even to this day, but dwindling away in North Africa there. And Herodotus' map that you'll look at will show you they didn't know sub-Saharan Africa existed, but they mention Atlas Mountains over there, and they thought the Nile came from there. And there's Atlantis listed on the mountain saying, well, that's where it was, and King Atlas, the whole 9 yards. People want to look past that point too. Of course, the Eye of the Sahara, and people have made connections there, but that has the ringed effect onto it, but so does this ancient Minoan island that blew all up. It pretty much left it as a crater, which is half submerged in water, and it has this ringed effect kind of on it like a bullseye. No, it's not exactly like it said in the text, but hopefully you've come to find out that not all the Greek things are exactly as it's said in the texts. That sometimes there are things that are a little bit different than the texts that are shown there. And again, this story comes way down to here. What I find odd about it is through here they end up showing you a whole lot of cartouches, and then this set right here, they seem to be empty. They show Thoth, and this was supposed to be, and it says at the very first of it that this is the wisdom and recording of Thoth from the ancient times. And it's thought that this might go back some 7,000 years, someone else pulled off, but that wouldn't fit the timeline either, unless there was an earlier destruction to Minoan and Crete and then a later one, and that doesn't seem to make sense either. I don't know if we'll ever make exact all sense out of it, but one thing that's for sure, it's strange that the Temple of Edfu would have something that, if you read through, seems to. I'm going to try to get a verifier and find the Edfu text and see if it's listed in there. But it seems to correspond with the idea of Atlantis, only it leaves out a few keynotes which may have been changed over time, and instead of 9,000 years it's 900, and it mentions the place Capthor, which anybody that's in Egyptology realizes that's what they named those people there. That's the same name. And they're talking about the event that had happened to them 900 years before, ruining everything, causing a big problem all across the shore, leading to the sea people and all the things that happened we had talked about before. And this actually may be that tale of Atlantis that you see and know so much about here, written all up on this wall. So I'm going to take another look into this and see if I can find this tale about the Minoans, this island, and so on that they connect it to, and the primordial sea that they started from in the Wayback Machine. It kind of would make sense now, looking at the fact that the Minoans, which we realized a long time ago through genetics, are actually a European people, and they were highly advanced. They had plumbing and all kinds of things that, to a people even of that time, are just way more advanced than they were. But it had happened, they were at that point 1,000 years before them. I made the comment before that the Greeks surpassed what they used to say of the old Atlanteans, and in doing so they kept trying to make them one better, one better, one better, and I believe that this is a retelling of it, trying to make them one better than what the old tale was, because they had surpassed that point, and to stand there and tell the same tale whenever they were standing in that same position was kind of odd. But a lot of people have realized that that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to say, okay, we're here at this point these people were before, and let's not screw this all up, we're different. Now they of course take credit for saving it all in the story, where the Egyptians said that after they came in and they were whooping everybody, you, the Greeks, stood alone against them and fought them off. But we find that that might have been a hedging point for up in the Aegean and stuff, but we really find that they came down south, and the person that held them off in Egypt was actually the Egyptians. Well, they didn't hold them off too perfectly, because the Philistines seemed to be leftover remnants of them and some of the other sea peoples conflagrated together. And of course, I'll put out a video here shortly showing you the genetics of those Philistines and then how it's European, but then it just fades off into the local population. Let me know what you think down below. And again, if anybody's got a copy of the Edfu text and a link that I can go through, just put it right down there and I'll go into it. If you can find the things that I'm talking about, let me know. Peace.